Welcome to the Stress Free Dentist Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Block. As always, I want to inspire, entertain, and educate you on the best tools and technologies out there. My goal is to help make your practice and career more profitable, efficient, and most importantly, more enjoyable. And check out all of my nonfiction and children's books on Amazon. And check out the stressfreedentist.com for any upcoming events. And if you're feeling you're a dental professional that's burnt out, or you just feel stuck or want to get to that next level, visit the International Academy of Dental Life Coaches or www.iadlc.com, and we'll get you matched up with a life coach that understands dentistry. I also wanted to thank our amazing sponsor, Equa Marketing. They have helped me and my practice over the years to improve with SEO and website performance. And to find out how you can make your practice dominate in your area, go to www.equa.com/MSMSFD to book your complimentary meeting. Again, that's www.ekwa.com/MSMSFD. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode. And today I'm joined by Dr. John Montoya. John, thanks so much for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I want to hear about all about your journey into dentistry and about your software, Dental Purchasing Partners, your group that you founded. Let's dive right in, man. How did you even decide to become a dentist?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. I've wanted to be a dentist ever since I was a little kid. I don't know what drew me to dentistry when I was so little, but I've always talked about it. And then, as I got into college, I thought maybe I'd go down the medical route. And so I started interning with some doctors, and every doctor that I interned with just wasn't happy with what they were doing. Their life was controlled by the insurance companies or policies. They didn't have kind of autonomy to practice medicine the way that they wanted to. And so I was actually, you can't tell now, but I was working at a gym and in shape at the time. And this older gentleman kept coming in and he was asking me about how college was going and what was I going to do with my future? And I said, I thought I was going to go this direction and I was interested in dentistry. And he happened to be a dentist, and he said, why don't you come shadow me and see, what life is all about in dentistry? And so I ended up going to his office one day a week while I was in college. And then he introduced me to his endodontic friend. And then he introduced me to his oral surgeon friend. And then he introduced me to his orthodontic friend. And so I was actually interning 4 days a week in different specialty practices and one general practice. And everybody was happy. They loved what they were doing. Um, they had autonomy over their lives. They could make their schedules, break their schedules, and so, I really fell in love with dentistry at that point. And so, life just took me that direction. And here I am today, still practicing.
And now, where did you end up going? Where'd you go to college, and where did you end up going to dental school?
Yeah, I went to college at UCSD in San Diego, and then I went to Creighton University. And then after dental school, I went back to San Diego. I practiced in La Jolla for 7 years. And then as I started thinking about having a family with my wife, we didn't really want to raise kids in Southern California. So she was from Colorado and we moved to Colorado and I bought a practice in Boulder and that's where I've been ever since. Yeah.
And so after you said you went to Creighton, you went to San Diego. Did you open up a practice, right from the start? Did you associate for a while? What happened there?
Yeah, I was like a quick associateship into a partnership. So I was a partner for 7 years, and then sold my practice back to my partner. Moved out here, bought a solo practice, and then I've actually owned multiple practices in Colorado. And right before COVID, I ended up selling off all my practices, but one. So I'm down to one practice now.
And so just going back, you were actually a partner and you you sold out the rest of your shares or ownership to your partner. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
Um, and then how did that work? I'm assuming that that partner, because I'm in a similar situation where I'm 50-50. I'm assuming that that partner had to have someone else kind of in the reins to kind of take over your patient load, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, after I left, my partner started interviewing associates, and then he actually brought on two associates, and was at the point in his career. I mean, he was older than I was, and so he was at the point where he could slow down a bit, and so he brought on two associates to replace what I was doing, and then kind of pick up a little bit of his share as well. Um, and then years down the line, I know he just kind of sold out to one of his associates, and I don't know what the history of the practice is after.
And I mean, to me, San Diego sounds amazing, but the weather and everything. And I've been to La Jolla. It is nice. I imagine it's not cheap to live there.
No, I mean, I say, I kind of jokingly say it's great to be a tourist there, but it's a different aspect of living. I mean, a tourist, you get to see all, you get to go to the beach and you get the nice weather, and then, but you're only stuck in traffic for a little bit, and dealing with the expense. And so it is pretty pricey there. I mean, don't get me wrong, lifestyle and everything is really nice, but, people are, trying to keep up with the Joneses out there, I think, more than, and living paycheck to paycheck than doing really, really well, right? I mean, I think that's just kind of the vibe that I had, and especially in La Jolla. There was a lot of people that had nice things, drove nice cars, but when you present a treatment, they're like, "Oh, I don't know how that's going to fit in the budget."
Yeah. Yeah. I used to work in some towns outside of Boston, and they were pretty well off towns, and that clientele can be difficult. It can be a challenging number of patients that come in. And man, I felt like such an imposter when I got out of school and I was trying to not sell, but educate and treatment plan and get treatment plan acceptance from CEOs and lawyers and doctors and engineers, and some of them are pretty challenging to chat with and do dentistry on. So I was glad I didn't settle in a type of situation like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember. There's a theory or a law out there, like the more you make, the more you spend. Like your lifestyle just kind of keeps going up with that instead of, being satisfied where you're at, and then, having that income, grow and allow you to really build a nest egg and retire versus like, okay, I need the next thing, or I need, a new car or bigger house or bigger yard, or, next vacation, that sort of stuff where people kind of tend to overdo it. And, everybody does it. So very few master not letting their income get away from them.
Yeah, and I think dentists can do the same thing. They see their friends that have two practices, three practices, and they feel like they have to do the same thing and keep up with the Joneses. And personally, I'm glad I didn't. I have a simple formula: one wife, one pet, two kids, one practice, one ping pong table, and that's been what I've stuck to. And I've heard when you've had hit multiple practices. I've heard when you go from that one to two, and then that two to three jump, it can really be a stress.
It is, and I give praise to those doctors that are still practicing and managing multiple locations. I mean, you need a solid team behind you in order to do that. But it does take an exorbitant amount of time, if you're still, wet finger dentist practicing, and then trying to deal with everything else that goes on top of a practice. I mean, not even just one practice is a lot to take on. Add a second one and a third one. I mean, you've got to have your systems dialed in. Yeah.
And now you moved to Colorado, and you said you had multiple practices, but then something happened? Was it right after COVID where you were going to sell your practices and then things kind of fell apart?
No, so, right before COVID, I'll be honest, I got a little burnt out with, running multiple things at once. And so, you know, I thought at one point in time I'd kind of build an army of practices and then eventually sell this to, someone else and kind of walk away into the sunset. But, it was just a lot to manage. And so I kind of got to the point where I said, I don't want to go down that route of more and more and more. So I ended up selling off the practices individually, and just scaled it back down to one practice. And I sold the last practice December 19th, 2019, right before COVID, 2 months before COVID. And it made my life a lot easier. I'm happy to be back down to one practice. It simplified things a lot for me. But things changed with that as well.
And tell me about dental purchasing partners.
Yeah, so, going back to the multiple practice thing, I had, every time I added a practice to my portfolio, my vendors saw me as getting bigger. And so, with that, I had essentially economy of scale. And so my pricing structures on a lot of things got better, right? And I would talk to them. I'd say, well, how come I wasn't getting this pricing before? And they said, well, you only had X amount of practices and now you have Y. And so you can buy more and that makes it more enticing for us. And so as I sold off the practices, those vendor deals went away, right? And I thought, this is ridiculous. Why am I now paying the most out of, when I know what the pricing was before? And so I talked to my vendors and I said, well, how do I get that pricing structure back being a solo practice? They gave me a formulary and, I was able to really find a way to get economy of scale, but keep my independence. So I didn't have to sell out to a DSO to get that pricing. I could still be a solo practitioner. I formed a company called Dental Purchasing Partners where we basically get a collection of doctors together, we get a collection of vendors together, and we get the economy of scale just like DSOs get. Yeah.
And is that for things like supplies and software and implants? Is it kind of all across the board?
Yeah, so we have over 80 different vendors. We're trying to touch every aspect of the practice, whether it's supplies, marketing, equipment, different softwares, accounting, merchant services. I mean, you name it, we probably have it. If we don't have it, we're going after it. Yeah.
It's amazing, like all the things you just mentioned. We and what it takes to run a business and do dentistry at the same time is just so much going on in a dental practice that prices can get out of hand. And if you're not, if you don't have a good finger on the pulse of what you're paying and what your expenses are, things can really get out of hand.
Yeah, and the creep is real. I mean, it doesn't matter how much you produce. It's really how much you're spending and what's that chunk in between, right? And so, a lot of doctors are don't realize, you know, man, my supplies are 8% and they should be somewhere in the 4 to 6 range. And how do I get there? Or, when was the last time I evaluated my merchant fees for my credit card processing? Or I'm financing these patients. What's my rate, right? Or I want to buy that new widget. How am I going to get the money for it? And do I have to pay full retail, right? You don't have to, one, pay full retail. And, there's ways to, deal with your overhead to find money for the new equipment, give your staff raises, add a 401k or, whatever. Because if you don't have the overhead, where's that going to come from? It comes from either the doctor's salary or it doesn't happen, right? And that's the worst thing. The other thing that you look at is, okay, like at some point in time, you're going to want an exit strategy, right? And so, if you're $1 million practice, say your practice A, and you're doing $1 million, but your overhead is 80%, your price isn't going to be the same as practice B doing $1 million in collections, and your overhead's 50%, right? I mean, those are wildly different practices. And you could take that 80% and get it down to 50% with some simple changes. And that's what DSOs are doing. They're coming in and buying these practices that aren't run as efficiently as possible. And they're just saying, okay, well, supplies, check, we'll cut that, we'll cut this, we'll cut that, we'll cut that. And they're just really successful at doing that because they have the ability to get these things at economy of scale, which the private practice can't negotiate that on their own, and that's where we come in. You know,
And how does it work? Is it a membership? Is it a monthly fee? How does someone get in your network?
yeah, yeah. So it's a membership fee. It's month to month, no long-term contracts. It's only $97 a month, and so we can find you that $97. So the membership is essentially free. I mean, just on a supply order alone, we'll find you $97 in savings, and then the rest is cherry on the top. So that's how we get the leverage to go to these vendors and say, okay, we've got this paid membership group. They're all interested. They're all using our network. What can you do for us? And the vendors look very favorably on a type of relationship like that.
And how does it work with, let's say I'm using a specific type of bonding or cement or composite, and I really want to continue to use that. How does that work with your software to find the best price?
Yeah, so we have major retailers, so you don't have to change anything. So if you're using, Reliax cement, you can get the same cement through our suppliers. We do have a procurement software that will shop all the major retailers, whether that's Henry Schein, Patterson, Burkhart, Benco, Darby. It'll show you all the pricing for everybody, including ours, to make sure you get the best price. So if you want to really order from a particular vendor, you can, but at least you know the pricing structure for everybody else. So we want you to use the same stuff you're using. We don't want you to change just because X is cheaper, but you've never used that before. I mean, use everything you are, just don't pay full price.
And just curious, what do you think out there that dentists are just, really overpaying for as a private owner? Is it the credit card processing fees, like you mentioned? Is it just, in general, just your everyday supplies that we're using? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, some of the big things are supplies, credit card processing, and then just all the different payments for different softwares that they're adding in. I mean, people have great stuff with like Dental Intel or Mango or a lot of these different things, but a lot overlap, right? And so they're using one feature here and one feature there, and if they want to keep that, if they went direct to the vendor, they're probably paying top dollar. So what we do is we go and say, okay, well, you have Mango, you have Dental Intel, you have this. Our pricing structure is X, you're paying Y. Let's get you down to Y if you want to keep all those. Okay. Or do you have something that's doubled up? Do you really need that? You know? And then the last thing is when people are trying to add equipment, I love our dental reps. They're super important. And they're a great benefit to the practice, but they get paid with how much you spend, right? And so, if you say, I want a new intraoral camera, they're going to give you a price and they may discount it 5%, but there's a lot more margin in there to play with, and so you'd be amazed at what some of the market for this stuff really is. It's mind blowing. And that 5% that you think you're getting a deal, you're not.
And now you're, like me, you're still full-time practicing. I'm at 3.5 days a week. I think you're somewhere in the same ballpark.
Hmm.
People always ask me, how do you do so much, what you're doing? And like we were chatting earlier, and I enjoy this. I enjoy doing podcasts and I enjoy what I do with my software and my books. Doing a number 15 crown on a patient that can't lie back and can't open wide, that's work. So to me, this just flies by. What are your thoughts? I know you had there was a eureka moment where you saw there was a problem you could solve. You became an entrepreneur. How do you fit it all in a day, being a practicing dentist and the founder of a software and GPO company?
Yeah, it's really comes down to scheduling and tailoring your life the way you want to see it, right? I do still practice 3.5 days a week, but I engineer my schedule where um, I'm not running from patient to patient. We spend quality time with our patients, and then I've got dedicated time for, this business. And then, I structure dedicated time that I make sure I'm home and spending time with my family and my 4 kids and, doing things that I enjoy and love. And so, um, dentistry is great and it gives me the lifestyle and the ability to do that. And I think that can happen for every dentist out there, really.
And now let's wrap up with two final questions. The first
Mhm.
one is, how do we find out more about what you're up to? And then the second one is, what advice would you give to the young dentists out there?
Gosh. Um, so how to get a hold of me, dentalpurchasingpartners.com is our website. I've got a scheduling link on there, my phone number. It's my personal cell phone number. Anybody can get a hold of me at any time on that number. My email address is on there, john@dentalpurchasingpartners.com. You can peruse our vendor list and see who we are currently offering. We're adding members and vendors all the time, and so that's an easy way to look at what we're doing. Um, and then, gosh, for the young dentists out there, don't get taken aback by the shiny new thing. Don't overextend yourself. Like we were talking about earlier. Gosh, my colleague has the latest CBCT or, has two practices or lives in this certain neighborhood because everybody's at a different point in their lives and everybody's at a different point in their education. And really, cash flow is king. I mean, you want your office to cash flow very successfully because when you're not worrying about when the payments are coming in or, the bills are stacking up, life gets a whole lot easier when you're not stressed about paying for things, right? And so, that stuff will come in time. Um, Look at all the dentists that came before us. I mean, they didn't have 3D printers and they didn't have CBCTs. And there was some amazing dentistry being done, right? So it can be done. And I'm not saying don't get that stuff. I'm just saying, be conscious and think about it and make sure that it works within your budget, works within your cash flow, because there's ways to do a lot of this dentistry, do a lot of the modern stuff, and not have to get yourself, you know, indebted to a payment, right? You know, there's ways around that until you can buy it outright or, make sure it fits within your budget, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I found that, now I'm 50. I wish I had done this earlier, but I no longer compare myself to others. It took me some time to do that. When I was younger, I would go to conferences and lectures and seminars and would compare myself to the people I was sitting next to or the person speaking. And it often did not, mentally turn out well. I would leave those conferences feeling worse. So I no longer do that. I'm happy with what I'm doing, and I don't compare myself to my peers or if I go to a conference, the person speaking, because they may be showing their best work. They're
Mhm.
not sharing the bad review they got or the fact that they had to redo that crown 8 times or that filling kept breaking. We all have these issues. So, do the best you can. And I really found that, keeping positive people around you, removing those comparisons, removing negativity from your life is really it's super powerful for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And the young guys, start investing early, right? Save 10% of your salary and just put it aside, get a good financial planner, start a 401k, start investing so, you have a nest egg 20 years into your career or, if it grows to the appropriate level, you can retire early if you want to. You don't have to, but you have the option.
Great stuff, man. John, thanks so much for the time and excellent episode.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to the Stress Free Dentist podcast. And don't hesitate to get in touch with me at info@thestressfreedentist.com. And if you haven't already, please subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Until the next episode, I'm Dr. Eric Block, the Stress Free Dentist.